Hello and welcome to Glific webinar. Glific is an open source platform which is built in Elixir and Phoenix. In this webinar, we talked about the overall testing approach and the unit testing in detail. Enjoy.
Okay, so yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Pankaj. I'm working as a technical lead in Glific, and yeah. So today, as you can see from the topic that we are looking at how we structure the unit testing in Glific on the backend side. And yes, the talk will be on unit testing and around Glific. So if you have any question around, just write it down in the chat box, or you can ask me after this webinar. Okay. So yeah. So introduction. Here I'm assuming that you already know about Glific. I mean, what the product is and how it's helping all the organizations. And yeah, so I'm talking now on the tech spec. So we are working on Glific from last 9 months, and now we are pretty close to release our 1.0 version. And as we are stabilizing this process, I think we are expecting a lot of contribution on this open source thing. So while having that thought in mind, we thought that let's create a series of webinars which will cover some small technical aspects which will help all the developers and the community to start contributing in Glific. And today, as inter, so and the unit testing is the most basic thing and the latest also. So yeah, we thought that let's start with the unit testing itself. Next, so I think there are a lot of resources on internet available. Like what is unit testing, how it helps the developers, and why it's needed and all. So I'll just talk about in brief. So unit testing is the code which is written by a developer, which checks which checks all the errors and possible errors which can be occur while developing the system itself. So let's say if I wrote a function, class, or anything, I just need to write another code who will check that if in case this code changes or in case something happened with my original code, how system should behave in that case. So that's on the unit testing part. And after that, yeah, I mean, all the advantage you already know that it reduces the defected, and once you change the function, it's easy to refactor the code also. So now you can be more confident, and the system will tell you in case you want to change any function or any class. So you need, so it will streamline the process itself. And yeah, of course, once you write the test cases, it will increase the code quality and the complete file structure. Okay, so yeah, and now we'll jump on the code itself. So let's start with the life cycle of testing and how we are doing in Glific. So here I'm taking one more assumption that you already know about a bit of Phoenix architecture and how the directory structure and all, how the files and what are the convention of function programming in this. And to start with, I'll just go through on that quickly. So in Phoenix, we have a directory called test, which covers which include two directory with the project name. So one is Glific, which covers all the controller thing, whatever the backend code handles, all the small units where the complete API works. The second is Glific Web, which because Phoenix is a model view controller has model view controller architecture. So whatever web thing, whatever if in case you build any application where Phoenix support the web application also, then you write the test case in Glific Web directory. So that's why there are two directory. In Glific, we are just using the first one in most of the cases. So now, so yeah, and whenever we run any test case, so it runs with a. Let me go to the terminal itself, and so to run the test suite, we just need to run mix test, and it will run the test. So that's a Phoenix thing. Phoenix gave us this command to run the test suite. Yeah. Now you can see that the all the system is start running the test cases. All the tests we written so far, and yeah, there are some errors also. So whatever system behaving it differently, whatever code I change it shows you that these are the errors, and this code cannot be shipped. So that's on the basic of Phoenix thing, and you can check out the Phoenix documentation on how the tests are working, and yeah. So on the life cycle perspective, I'll just show whenever we run this mix test command, it first load this data case thing. So if I just show you, let's say if we take an example for contact test. So yeah, so in Phoenix, whenever we run the mix command, it goes through this directory and run all the test files one by one, and all the files who are having the AXS syntax. So that's how Phoenix captured that. Okay, these files are the test file, and these he needs to run whenever we run that command. So if on taking this example, how in Glific how we structured that, we wrote and you will see that complete this structure in all the test cases. So we have define some valid arguments, valid input fields for context, and all these are required fields. Now this Phoenix delivered this test function to us, and which received two arguments. And so in Elixir library, you can wrote the function like this, or you can see like this also. So like this one here, the first argument will be the name of the test cases, and the second argument will be all the attributes you want to set. So as you know that Phoenix is a multi-tenant application, so we have to pass the organization ID to run all the code. If you don't pass the organization ID, it won't run any code. And so that's why we make some changes, which I'll talk about next, that how we can pass the organization ID in every test cases and how we are using it here. But for now so first name is the test case name, and second the arguments which required for the test cases. And these arguments come from this file, the use data case thing. So if we go in the support directory and click on data case, you will see that we sort of hard coded the organization ID here, that it will always pick the first organization ID and it will fetch all the required information. And yes, so whatever you will pass from here, this setup function from data case, it will pass to all the test cases you are going to run. And now once you receive those test cases, those data you can access that from here itself. So this attribute coming from the data case itself. In case you override, or in case you want to put some more data in this variable based on the individual functions, you can write your own setup functions here, like this one. So it now it will run both the test cases. I mean, first it will load the data case and the variables, and second now it will prepare the test cases for this file itself. And here we are just adding, we are seeding some data into the database and the organization. Next part is the basic function. So in Phoenix, what happens is you have the MVC kind of thing. So for that, you first need to create the context, and so every module has a file called context, which have a certain defined function. So if I go to the context here, you will see that there are some default function like list context, count context, and filter and everything. So now if I create a new file called text, that file will also have those similar functionality. So all the current operations and the some specific operations for that particular module. So in that case, like contact has that permission function and the default function on get and count. In tags, we will have that get tag and list tag and create tag and all kind of things. But the particular function can be changed. I mean, this specific function won't be there. Okay, so in Phoenix now we write the context and the view and the model, and all the tests. If you see, it will just capture this one. That this one should remove the one convention we are following here. That your test name should be like a documentation for the system. So if you want to understand how the content working and what are the areas I can use and how that function works, these test cases will help you to understand that. So like list contact one should remove block context unless. So yeah, so like this one, you can see that okay, I'll receive I'll list all the contexts which are not blocked in the system. Same this one. And this one, it's called artery. So it shows that list context is the function name and one is the argument. Same is the count context and zero is the argument. So that's how we define the artery, and that's how we define the function test case name in the Glific. Next thing is okay, so that's how the life cycle works. So we run the mix test command, it loads all the module and it loads this use cases data case function. Then we define the variable name, and then we start defining the test cases and write the test cases for all the functions we are writing that right now. And there are a couple of more things which I'll explain in other webinar, like how we are doing the integration testing and the other API testing. But this webinar is just for unit testing. So yeah, so unit test, you just need to write those things which will test the specific unit or the specific functions in a module. Yeah. Next thing is the GraphQL testing. So as you know that GraphQL is the new alternative for REST API, and Glific uses the GraphQL for structuring their APIs. To test the GraphQL in Glific itself, we use another package called Wormwood, and it allows you to define all the GraphQL queries and the test cases based on that. So as we are talking about the context, so I'll show you one GraphQL test we are writing here. So yeah, so whenever you start the contributing in Glific backend API and you write the test cases, and let's say you wrote a GraphQL query, you will use this structure. So load GQL is the function we get from the Wormwood function itself, and it loads the GraphQL query and it's a schema. So here I'm just taking some assumption that you already know how the GraphQL works and how we pass the parameters in that. So if I just show you the GraphQL query here, yeah, so it's just a plain GraphQL format where this is the query name and this will the result we will return. Now, as you can see, it requires one parameter called filter. And if you see how I wrote the test cases for count query, so I just pass that filter as an argument. So it's pretty straightforward. You just need to take care of all the data, and you will check all the things which required for the GraphQL query. In case something is missing, it of course give you error that if your contact query is working or not. So that's how we are testing the GraphQL in Glific right now. So if you have any question or anything, you can check out the Wormwood documentation and the Glific documentation also. Next thing would be the other thing you need to take care of while writing the test cases for Glific. We added two jobs in Phoenix architecture. So now whenever you start writing the test cases, you need two things. Either for every test case, your data should be clean, your database should be clean, because because there are some constraint check, and you assume that there will be no data into the database while writing that function. And for other test cases, you just think about that there should be a data into the database. So the rule of thumb is that if you will always assume that your data is clean, you don't have any data into the database, and you will create that data from in that function itself. So if I show you this form, this test cases like create contact. So it's easy that you just need to define that variable and you need to make this query, create contact. And you will that contact will be checked and that contact will be created, and then you can easily assert them that okay, the name is correct. Whatever I pass the name in the attribute, it's the same name, it's the same octane type, and that kind of stuff. But in case, let's say you need to check that contact is already there or not, and you need to check that unique constraint. So for that, you have to create two contacts in that function itself, because you assume that your database is clean and there is no data itself. So you create the two function here, and then one contact, and then you try to create the contact with the same name again. In that, you cannot assume that okay, my database is already there, or how to check that. So that's why what we did is we clean the test, we clean the database before writing any test case, and that helps. They'll help us to test these cases, like these cases, and writing the test cases itself. But for the developer ease, and to make the development or writing test cases bit easy, because every time when you clean the database and write the test case, it takes a lot of time. So we wrote two jobs. So in case you want to test, and these are all Glific specific, this is not a Phoenix thing. So in case you want to make a full test that every time my data should be clean and or it should run all the test cases, you run this mix test full command. It will clean the database, and it will drop the data, it will create the database, and then it will run all the test cases. Another one, when I run the mix test, it just run the previous test. It doesn't run all these tests, all the migration and all. It will just run on the previous data only. So in case you're writing a small unit test case, where we are confident and you just wanted to check that okay, I don't need the clean database to test this function. You can run mix test, and just before committing your code, you run the mix test full command. But in case you need that your data should be clean, and then you check that function, the complete integration test, then you want to run the mix test full command. So yeah. Now the next thing is we are in Glific, we are using a cover all tool, because to check that how the test coverage is and how the system covered with the unit test or the complete testing thing, cover all helps us. So if I show you, yeah. So if you run this command mix test mix cover all, it comes with the package itself. This command will show you just in the above thing. So this command will show you that how your test files are, and what are the test cases are covered, and what are the functions and modules are covered, completely covered in the test cases. So let's just complete it. And okay, I think we need to wait for some time.
So does it take always take this much amount of time, or like it depends on system to system?
Yeah, it depends on system to system. I mean, it run the parallel processing, but right now I'm sharing the video and the files, so that's why I think it's taking more time. But it runs all the test cases, so it around 50 to 60 seconds.
Okay, and it will tell us that in terms of code coverage, what is the coverage right now in terms of maybe percentages or something.
Yeah. So it will just run. Meanwhile, we can talk about this thing. So
Sure.
What Phoenix does is it runs the test cases with a random number. So sometimes it runs the first test and the third test and the fourth test, and then it runs again. So in case you are fixing something and you just wanted to run the test again in the same pattern Phoenix ran previously, then you use this number. So if you along with the mixed task, you will pass this number. So it will all the tests run in the same order. Otherwise, it will run the test in a different order. Okay. Meanwhile, now so the coverall gives us this structure, this file information that in my file. So right now I'm just talking about the context. So let's say the context file, the context I showed you before, it's 86.2% complete covered. So it's not 100%. And this is the tool will help a lot of things. I mean, you can start contributing in Glific because with the help of this tool. And so let's say now if I write this file path, so what it will do now is it will show you all the functions and list of all the functions which are not covered in the test cases yet. So in Glific, we take approach that let's ship first and then make it solid. So we do a lot of experiment with the modules, and we ship without a few test cases, which we know that it's less important, and we can cover them all after checking this with the coveralls. So that's why there are a lot of files which are not 100% tested, and the opportunity also for all the new members in the team who can add test cases for that and understand the system. So I think now when this task will complete, it will show you all the functions which are not covered, and but yeah, you can find all the test all this thing in the documentation of Glific and the coveralls itself. But what I want to mention here is that you can just set up the Glific from the open source repo, run this command, and you can start contributing that. Okay, I make the test cases 100% for contact, for tags, for module, whatever report this function gives you. So yeah, I mean, it normally it doesn't take that much time, and but I think this is the system thing.
And does it cache also? Like, the first time you run it, because I think, we had some issues when we were doing, at least, when we were doing setting up CI, I think. That, the first time it was running, it was taking a lot of time because it had no cache, and then it became very fast. So, is it the case over here as well?
No. So the test cases doesn't cache anything at all. I mean, it's a clean system. Whenever you run the test case, in case you want to use the previous caching and all, you again use this seed number.
Okay.
But whenever you run the command on CI checks also, it doesn't cache anything. So okay, so now it shows me all the functions which are covered in green, and in like this one. So it shows me that okay, this condition is not tested. So we are not sure that, and you can see that it's a pretty simple if check. But yeah, this is not covered, and that's why it's showing the 86% thing. So what you can do now is that you can just run this command, and you can write a small test case, unit test for this one, and then check and then create a PR. Similarly for this one also, these things. So yeah, so I think unit testing is it's pretty much same in the Glific. We are taking we are following all the conventions Phoenix tell us to do, and the only changes we are doing here is that the structure I showed you in the context file, that we are taking this as a convention, that you always write the test case with this convention, and these two mix test and mix full command. So these are the pretty much changes which are Glific specific. Otherwise, you can learn all the life cycle and all from the Phoenix documentation itself. So what next in the yeah, I think that's all on the unit testing thing, and because it's easy to understand it, and it's a good way to start contributing in Glific. That's why we thought that let's talk about this one first. Yeah. Any questions?
One thing, Pankaj. There was one screen where there was some percentage of the code coverage. So, and we often use the word 100% code coverage and things like that. So, what is the meaning of this code coverage? Like, what are we actually covering with these test cases?
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, I think that code coverage means that if your contact module So all the contact related function in that contact module itself. And if the code coverage is 86%, it means there are some functions defined in that directory which are not covered, and you don't wrote the test cases for those conditions. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so like, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take any example. Just looking at this one. So like this function. So we don't have a test case where we don't have any test case which is using this query or which is calling this function. Right?
Okay.
So and it shows you that this function is not tested. So that's why it's showing in red. So if there is some error in this function, let's say there is no user ID column, right, into the DB, it won't give you the error, and that won't be caught. So that's why it's showing. But in case there is a test case, user should know that okay, user ID is not there. So on that way, it's a bit dangerous. But as I said earlier, that we are doing some experimenting, and now we are making it solid. So every month we run a sprint for 2 or 3 days to clean all the files and run the test cases. Does it make sense?
Got it. Yes.
All right. Any other question? So yeah, I think so everything is plain, and every tool is there. So if it's and yeah, so based on my understanding, it should be easy if you start with the unit testing and while contributing into the Glific. So that's all.
I just
Yeah.
Go ahead.
yeah. So I have one question, Pankaj. How do we define at what project scale do we need testing support? Let's say if we have a small project, I think we don't need unit testing for that.
So yeah, I think it is based on the experience. So like in Glific, we are it's an open source, right? The first thing. So it's basically for developers. We are writing this project for developers also, so that they can build other. They can write more extensions. They can use in their organizations directly. So on that perspective, test cases are very important. Otherwise, if they will break something, I mean, yeah, it will easy to if there are test cases, it will easy them to do some experimentation and just run the test cases. Okay, things are working fine. So in the open source project, I recommend that we have to have the test cases. Otherwise, it's not going to be used that much. On small projects, so let's say if you're writing a single module and some, on those you can just neglect the test cases, because you can test the functionality is very limited and you already know what you need to test. So I think it depends on the project scope itself. But open source, I'll definitely recommend that on every open source project should have the test cases, because it's a developer thing. It's not directly only for users or for single person who are going to do the coding and all. So, I mean, there is no hard and fast rule that for this project you should have a test case on this or not. Ideally, every project should have the test cases. But if the project scope is too low and if there are only 1 or 2 modules, so then I think we can think that should we have the test cases or not.
Okay, so another question in that sense. So let's say if we have 2-3 days of 1 week of time, can we have the integration testing running in that time for a project in I mean Elixir?
I think, yeah, again, I mean, it depends on the scope. If you have 10 developers who can write the complete module pretty fast, then you should have the internal testing. But in case the use case is too small, then again, so you don't need the integration testing. But Yeah, I mean it's totally complete on project by project. So it's the decision of all the stakeholder, all the technical leaders that we should have the test cases or how it will be going to be used.
Okay, so how can we like emphasize to clients that you should have testing in your app for a I mean maintainable project?
So okay, so I think yeah. So where the client confused, I think because it takes time and it takes initially it takes time while writing the project, and so that's why I think I try and but I think we can convince them that if you write the test cases, it gives a lot of flexibility. You can easily onboard new members. It will improve the code quality, and you can if the code like all the benefits I showed. So we can tell the client if they will invest now, they have to invest less in the future. Otherwise, yeah, you know, I mean, all the projects. So I think the only thing, but yeah, it's really up to client that how he want to take that project. And let's say if he's creating a survey which is going to use for one time or once in a year kind of thing, right? And the scope is very less. I mean, this is a small survey. Then maybe he thought that okay, I'll do the manual testing and just wait. But the project like Glific and all, even if they are internal project, we should have the testing.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, Pankaj, I also have a one question. So, how you guys are writing the test cases in the Glific? I mean, you write the test cases first and then functionality, or first you write the functionality or then test cases?
Yeah, so we initially thought about that we will use the TDD model. So when we started Glific, we used the TDD. I mean, we were writing the test cases first and then writing the code to fix the test cases. But as the project grows and we get a lot of requests from the NGOs, okay, we need this feature and we need to do a lot of experiment where the code is keep changing every day. So like some functions we wrote initially, we don't use them at all and we just remove it. So what we started doing is that we wrote the function first and then the test cases and use this cover also. I mean the cover all feature and the tool I showed you. So now we are writing the function first. We are doing that the checks. I mean we are completing that module, thinking that okay, it makes sense to the users and how we improve. Once the feature is established and all, then we start the test cases for that and make the code more solid. So now the approach is changed, but initially we use the test cases, the TDD model.
Okay.
So if you start contributing in Glific right now, I mean, let's say if you're working on some feature, you can start doing some experimentation and making sense for users, and then write the test cases and yeah. But you cannot just release it for all the users without writing the test case. So once when we do that, we just allow one or two organization. I mean, ask one or two organization to use that feature and tell us that okay, this is making sense and these are the feedbacks and all. Then we ask all the organization that okay, this feature is stable now and you can use it. Without test cases, we don't declare that the feature is stable to use on the production for all the organizations. So test case is mandatory for every feature, but the approach is bit changed.
I have one question, Pankaj. So do you see complete? So like you showed that a lot of files are not you're not having 100% code coverage. So you see that being able to contribute to test cases and completing that coverage is a good way for an intern or for a fresher to maybe get to know that project and start implementing, or is it hard to fix those test cases? That's why they're not done.
No. I think a lot of test cases are not done because they are too easy, and we thought that yeah. I mean, we know that these are not big, and I mean a bit of confidence. But in any case, we will fix those. So I think yeah, that's a best way for me to start contributing in Glific. I mean, for any new intern, he can just write the test cases, and it will increase his understanding about the Phoenix, about Elixir and Glific also. So I think all those front it helps.
Okay.
So it's a good way, right? I mean, to just start fixing the unit test for Glific.
Okay.
But yeah, the opportunity, I mean, because every month we will complete, so I mean, soon these will be complete. But yeah, there will always be a scope for all the new features.
Okay.
Any other question?
Hey Pankaj, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I had one question. So, how effective these test cases are? I mean, you guys are putting lots of effort, right? What are the effort you guys are putting versus basically you are making. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I got the question. So yeah, I mean, test cases are very effective, as we all know, right? I mean, we have to have test cases. And the confidence it gives you on the code. So right now we can do any experiment while sending the message, or let's say while assigning the text, because those modules are 100% covered. So we know that it won't break any functionality which are currently running on the production server. So that's why it's effective. And yeah, our code quality it bit strong on there. So if any module is 100% tested, then it's 100% tested. We're not working on those that just to make these number 100%. We just writing one test for every function, and which call, because what this tool does is it just capture all the files which are not called entire the test suite. So yeah, so on that front, Glific has a pretty much good effective test cases. So, and these are just the code I showed you right now. It's just for unit testing. In other webinar, and when we will see that how the integration testing is happening, how we are doing the load testing and the regression testing also. So yeah, I think that will give more clarity on the effectiveness. But as I know that you cannot just go and just write every test that okay, this slider test case for this if thing, that this condition, this one condition, that doesn't make sense. So it should be sensible also.
So Satinder, where I see test coverage help, I mean test cases helped. So let's say if we have a bigger team of more than 2 or 3 people, and a new guy comes in that case, if he brings a new functionality, and the functionality that he brings is based on a component that is used in many functions. I mean, let's take a case of React, where a single component is used in many pages, or a function is used in many pages. If a new guy comes in and he makes some changes to that functionality, his functionality can be done, but it could break some other pages functionality. So mostly I've seen test cases usually checks in that case, and it really at that point of time, it where a new guy comes in and he makes changes to some functionality that we already made and it doesn't. Does it make sense? I think I was asking around how you guys are planning. Basically the effort versus output.
So yeah, so we put a lot of effort while just running the use case we got from the NGOs, and we feel that it's generic. So we put effort there first, and once we get an idea of the use case and organizations approve that okay, this makes sense, then we write the test cases. But on the effort wise, I think yeah, we are putting almost I mean so much effort while writing the test cases because it's so useful.
I have one question. Probably it was, what actually Satinder wanted to ask, that what percentage of effort of the overall task is, testing mistake, that unit testing mistake. Let's say if I have 4 hours and I can finish without testing, I can finish X amount. So I'm sure that with testing, I'm not finishing that feature in 4 hours with testing. So how much of that time you think testing has taken?
I mean, there is no
What percentage of
that. But
so
yeah,
if in case of planning, what percentage of in case of planning, what percentage of testing I should keep in my estimate that maybe for 4 hours of effort I will need at least 1 hour of testing as an estimate.
So yeah, I mean the changes are, I mean, so right now we are not following the TD model, right? So we don't write test cases when we are working on the that task right now. And we wrote all the test cases on the module one by one, I mean, in a single go. So I'm just thinking on that perspective right now, but you can see that initially it takes a lot of time writing the test, almost same time, but gradually it just decreases and decreases and decreases. So if you are estimating for one task for 4 hours maybe, and that is covered with the test cases, then I think it will help you to write those test cases for that specific task, because you know that it will not break anything and the confidence is high on that task. So, but for 4 hours, how much time a task should take on testing? Maybe I mean 1 hour. You can say 1.5 an hour for test cases. But yeah, that's not definitive answer. I mean, it depends on the task by task. You need to take that because for some tasks, let's say you need to make the environment completely. So if you are sending a message, then you need to create the contact and I mean the complete environment before sending that message. So in that case, it takes some extra time. But on other tasks,
I mean on an average, like high.
So
on high level, it's generally 20 to 25% of actual effort.
You can say that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so I think in a nutshell that these are really helpful and in everywhere. I mean, test cases are really helpful. It takes time, but yeah, it gives you a lot of confidence on the project, on the code, and when you get the error, you actually think, okay, I can write the test cases and that error won't become again, and the chances of that error just completely get off. So yeah, on that front, I mean, yeah, I don't need to just praise the test cases, but I think it's a good thing to have in your project. And all right.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.